All right, ladies and gentlemen, MrSotko here. Welcome back to the channel. Got a whole bunch of good news stuff for you today, and we're going to start with Vitalik Buterin's take on centralized exchanges, which is quite subtle, to say the least. So joining John Evans for an interview at TechCrunch sessions, Vitalik Buterin outlined his serious criticism towards centralized exchanges. Says, burn in hell. So, I mean, quite subtle, very vague. I mean, just tell us how you really feel, Vitalik Buterin. Just tell us how you really feel. Speaking about centralized exchanges, Buterin didn't pull any punches, saying, I definitely hope centralized exchanges go burn in hell as much as possible. Alrighty, fair enough. His negativity was sparked primarily because of the practice of charging outrageous amounts of money, 10 to 15 million, in listing fees so that users can trade their tokens on these exchanges. So exchanges do charge the developers of coins to list them on exchanges. Now, some of them charge less, some of them charge more. I've heard as little as 50,000. I've heard as high as, well, now 10 to 15 million. So he also noted that their main purpose was to bridge the fiat world in cryptocurrencies, where the former has only centralized gateways. So, again, some exchanges are charge more and less. I'm assuming Cryptopia exchanges like that charge less, and I'm assuming Binance and Bittrex and major exchanges like that charge much more. And so, you know, that's where they make the majority of their money, and is not only just the fees they charge, which makes sense, you know, to charge a fee because of the service they provide. Of course, they need to make money, but the amount of money they charge for you to put your coin on an exchange is pretty outrageous. The co-founder of Ethereum also mentioned that crypto-to-crypto exchanges present dear advantages, especially from the point of view of the user. Says that the exchange acts as an input and output tunnel, virtually transferring tokens from one address to another, but in two different currencies. So I don't feel too bad about centralized exchanges. I feel that, you know, they provide a good service, and you know, there's been centralized exchanges for a very long time. There isn't too many peer-to-peer exchanges. They don't do too well. Despite bashing on centralized cryptocurrencies, Buterin was also fairly objective, noting that decentralized solutions also face serious challenges. One of the biggest issues that you have to consider is user authentication. For instance, what will happen if a user loses his private key in a decentralized environment? There is no central authority which would be able to reset the key or allow the user to recover his password. Hence, the funds stored in one's wallet might get irrecoverably lost. And I think that's kind of a major problem with cryptocurrency. I think that's a very primitive problem in cryptocurrency, that you can just easily lose your keys and then lose your money forever. Whether you had $10 in crypto or $1 million in crypto, it's gone for good. And I feel that that's a subject of debate. I feel that's a subject which there could be some attention brought to. In that, again, you know, cryptocurrency to be really, really effective needs to be grandma friendly. You know, grandma can't be losing her money, you know, and this happens all the time. You might think, well, it's pretty easy to store your keys, and I agree, it kind of is. But you hear horror stories all the time on the internet. I mean, you know, you just go around to Reddit. I like how I said on the internet, as if like that's a new thing or something. But you know, if you can just go to Reddit, you can just Google horror stories of people losing their cryptocurrency, and you know, they lost it when they had 10,000 Bitcoin, and it was each Bitcoin was a couple pennies, and now it's you know, now it's 6,000 or 20,000 or $15,000, and how angry you must be and how much money you lost. So another issue that challenges structures of that kind is simple disagreement between communities. The lack of a central authority makes it harder to move forward when there are multiple groups of people, each believing that their way is the right way, who dig in their heels and refuse to budge on a certain topic. This is also what leads to so-called hard forks when the main network is split. Buterin also went on to explain the importance of formulating the right communities, as well as the critical role that early members play. Growth of the communities definitely depends on what the earliest members believe. I think it is something where we do make a deliberate effort to basically promote the right values and attract the right people, both in an inclusive sense and an exclusive sense. You know, so another reason why ICOs try to raise so much money is just so they can put their token up on these exchanges. I mean, $10 to $15 million. I mean, that's probably major exchanges. I mean, we're talking Binance, etc. But you know, the reason why they raise so much money is they have to, you know, they have to be paid out. They have to work on their project afterwards, and they have to pay an inordinate amount just to put it on exchanges. Exchanges don't just pick up coins because they think it's going to make them money. You have to go through an application process to put your coin on these exchanges. So the next article, Bitcoin hype has barely even begun, and the next article I have is somewhat relevant to this topic. So plenty of people are feeling the Bitcoin blues these days, understandably so, after the 20,000 to 6,000. Still, even an undeniable bubble obviously popped at the onset of 2018. The hype surrounding Bitcoin 6861 hasn't even come close to reaching a fever pitch. In fact, according to Blockbid, the hype has barely even begun. So, you know, the obvious bubble, yes, Bitcoin at this point it reached a bubble level, and it did pop back down to 6,000. Now, a bubble doesn't necessarily mean that it was completely kaput, that it was a defunct cryptocurrency, that it's dead. It doesn't mean that it went to zero. It just means that there was obviously a price bubble. It was overhyped, and it went down to 6,800. There were numerous reasons for that. The futures, lots of FUD around that time, but I believe mainly the futures is what kind of did it. As everything the CBE group touches ends up going down immediately, like literally within days of them actually preparing the futures for that particular commodity, such as silver, uranium, and now Bitcoin. So, quote here, I believe the hype has barely even begun. Only 1% of the global population owning any cryptocurrency, and news of banks and financial institutions looking in corporate blockchain technology and invest in cryptocurrencies. I think there will be a more mainstream adoption coming in the next 18 to 24 months. And I believe so too, but we keep getting this, oh, financial institutions are coming, they're coming, they're coming. And is that even going to be a good thing? You know, if they raise the price of it, is it going to be a good thing when they take all of the Bitcoin and can do anything they want with it? Because well, let's be quite frank, they have more money than us, and they can buy all the Bitcoin. I mean, essentially, some of these institutions could buy up all of the exchanges for the most part if they really wanted to. Now, that'd be probably a pretty bad idea, but it just goes to show how much money they have. So another quote here, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies as a whole have become sensitive to changes in the market, and with the news of Facebook lifting the ban on crypto, some confidence has returned to the market, which in turn has seen prices within Bitcoin. So another quote, the cryptocurrency market is such a young industry, and with the correct legislation and regulation, I believe cryptocurrencies will become part of our daily lives. But at what cost with legislation and regulation? When it was originally 2013, 2012, where there was just no regulation, it was just our currency. And, you know, some regulation may be needed to prevent scams and things like that, but at what cost? And we'll have to see in the future. And I just don't believe it's going to be as free as it was. It just never is. There's always that rose-tinted glasses that we'll all be wearing, and we'll be remembering the time when it was free and unregulated, and, you know, you could just sign up to an exchange with some kind of pseudonym and just start trading away and getting your money and getting more Bitcoin and getting more other coins. But that time is over, and it will be over forever. So there will be a sort of nostalgic look from everybody coming up. So the next article here is somewhat relevant to the Bitcoin hype. So the idea that every time a Bitcoin is lost, it will never be recovered. And this just creates a more and more rarity as time goes on. And within a few years from now, it's estimated currently that 4 million Bitcoin is lost forever by users for forgetfulness, essentially losing it, destroying it with maybe it was on a thumb drive, it got destroyed, maybe you lost it, maybe you lost your private key somewhere. 4 million Bitcoin out of only 21 million. And 1 million of it belongs to the Satoshi wallets. So there's 5 million out. So now we're only at about 17 million Bitcoin. So, you know, minus that, there's really only about 12 million in existence at the moment. And that's really, really small. And as time goes on, sure, more are created, but only to some extent. And that creation is going to slow down quite a bit. the blocks are always 10 minutes, but the required hash rate, the required electricity that's going to go in it is going to cost a lot more and will raise the price of Bitcoin because nobody will want to sell it below the electricity cost that it costs to actually make. And with more and more being gone, so I think, it took 9 years to lose 4 million. So in a few years, there'll be another million or two gone, and it will just continue on like that, very deflationary, maybe perhaps too deflationary eventually. So in comments to the New York Times, chain analysts said that user failures to create robust methods of password storage meant as much as 20 billion in Bitcoin is locked out of reach. So user failures, yes, I agree with that, but also developer failures that created this system in the first place that has these passwords, these long, complicated passwords that nobody can ever remember. I mean, you cannot remember your private key. If you can, you may be like a genius savant or something like that, or maybe you've been using it for so many years that you can now remember it. But for the most part, nobody can remember. Was that a capital H or was that a lowercase h? Is that a 0 or a capital O? Kind of thing. And nobody's going to remember that. And that's kind of an inherent problem that was created for us. So the figure makes up the majority of lost cryptocurrency. It added, due to Bitcoin being around considerably longer than any altcoins before their value increased. Maybe you could tell your readers that we don't help people find Bitcoin. Senior economist Kim Grauer told the publication. Chain analysts' reluctance to engage in detective work on behalf of Bitcoin holders comes as little surprise, with the FBI having accounted for almost $1 billion in recovery task revenue over the past 2 years. Despite the various tools hackers and criminals use to increase anonymity in Bitcoin, the firm says it could still unearth at least one counterparty for 80% of all Bitcoin transactions. For the average user with metal block preventing access to Bitcoin holdings, however, various services exist to help, some of which see surprisingly high success rates. U.S. hypnotist Jason Miller told the Journal that around 50% of those who come into him requesting psychological assistance to remember a wallet password or hard drive location manage to remember it. Interesting. Everybody has a photographic memory. With skilled hypnotic regression, you can access that photograph, he said, adding the proviso that he only accepts around 6 cases each year for a fee of 0.5 Bitcoin plus 5% of any recovered funds. Wow. So this guy works for thousands of dollars right now, approximately 3,000 something, plus 5% of any of your recovered funds. So make sure you have a lot of Bitcoin, because if you only have one, that's 3,000 plus that 5%, and there you go. So yeah, that's some expensive service, but I suppose. Usually when they find their lost Bitcoin, they're so excited they have no problem sending the commission on that reward. The more traditional methods of Bitcoin password recovery, paying a technical wizard to guess it from hints by trialing millions of permutations, is somewhat more hit and miss. Wallet Recovery Services, a startup dedicated to doing just that, says its levels of success are around 30%, but can be lower if the client has no recollection about what the password might consist of. So you need to know at least like some of the characters in the password, or the private key, for them to at least input those, and that lowers a little bit of the requirement on their part for brute forcing it. So Bitcoinists recommend that readers always store cryptocurrency in hardware wallets wherever possible, removing the need for a password in favor of a PIN. So yeah, I do recommend hardware wallets as well. I also recommend thumb drives, 2 of them. So just have 2 thumb drives and put your private key on both of them, and then just put them away somewhere. And that way, if you lose one, you still got the other. That way, if one becomes corrupt, you still got the other. If both of them become corrupt, eesh, that's a tough one. But never put it on some kind of cloud service, anything like that. That was the case with who was that YouTuber? He lost millions because he had it on a cloud service and somebody hacked him, and then I can't remember his name now, but I'll remember it as soon as the video's over, as usual. But either way, just have multiple backups. I mean, thumb drives are a dime a dozen, all right? So if you have like $10,000+ or something like that in Bitcoin, there's no reason to go to your local store or on Amazon, anywhere, wherever you want to do it, and buy like 3 thumb drives. Buy a hardware wallet, like a Trezor, and then buy like multiple hard drives and, or, you know, thumb drives, and just put the private key on each one of them, and then just store them away. Don't keep them on your computer or anything like that, and just store them away. So you have all these 3 or 4 thumb drives. It's, you know, it's come down to that, really. And if you have that much money into it, paying, you know, $30-40 for like 3 thumb drives or something like that, they're probably even less on like Amazon or something. But moving on to the next topic here, U.S. presidential candidate would pardon Snowden and Ulbricht on first day. So if you don't know, Ross Ulbricht is he was the creator of the Silk Road, and unfortunately the Silk Road sold many wildly illegal things. Now, I don't have too much of a problem with, you know, certain people doing certain drugs, because it's all on you, right? It's just all on you. But there are a lot of things that it's just, if you're gonna do that, go ahead. You know, just whatever you want to do. But the thing is I don't see how this guy didn't think he was going to be caught creating this website in which people sell weapons, they sell drugs, they sell all these things, and they ship them in the mail to you. That's the worst. If somebody was like, hey, I'm going to ship you some LSD in the mail, I'd go, yeah, probably not. Don't do that. Don't do that. Because, yeah. And just to let you know, like things like acid it's like the most illegal drug that you can actually manufacture. Like, they will put you away for life for manufacturing LSD. And so it just wasn't a good idea, to be totally honest. I understand, like, it's a good system for, you know, some people, but it's just not a good idea. It's terrible. But either way, he didn't really do too much wrong in having the site, and it's really up for debate. And then, of course, Edward Snowden, the guy that called out the NSA for spying on the world, basically. So former vice chair of the National Libertarian Party of the United States, Arvin Vohra, announced his candidacy for president. Among keys to his platform, he stated position: on my first day of presidency, I will pardon those in prison who have neither harmed anyone nor stolen anything. I will start with Snowden and Ross Ulbricht, he recently tweeted. So here's the thing. Here's the very unfortunate thing with all of this, is that the Libertarian Party never wins, ever. Basically, by being in the Libertarian Party in the United States, it's a guaranteed loss. And at this point, I'm not sure why anybody would. If you really want to do those things, and you want to be a libertarian, that's fine. But just run under the guise of a Democrat or a Republican, and then just sort of just kind of live that life, but like try to do your policies how you want them. Because no libertarian has ever won the presidency of the United States. Not to my knowledge. There may be a history. I should Google that before I actually say that. But to my knowledge, no non-Republican or Democrat has ever won the United States presidency. Ever. They run every single year, like the Green Party and the Libertarian Party, yada yada. They run every single year and fail absolutely miserably. People just don't want to have anything to do with it. You're either a Democrat or you're a Republican in the United States. I'm sorry to say that. It's just the way it is. Maybe a different party won, like 100 or 200 years ago kind of thing, you know, like 150 years ago presidency, like 19th century. I'm not sure, but it just doesn't happen. So education entrepreneur and principal libertarian firecracker Arvin Vohra is adept at stirring things up, though well known infamously within more radical and mainstream libertarian circles. Mr. Vohra's desire to seek the official Libertarian Party presidential nomination was less so. Although running for candidate, being a U.S. presidential candidate, can still get your ideas across, because you're running and you're campaigning and you're telling all these people your ideas. So it isn't a total waste, but it just does it. I mean, even if you feel like you want to vote for the Libertarian Party, it's just not going to go. It's honestly kind of a lost vote. I hate to say that. I hate to be so negative about it, but it just doesn't happen. So he took to Twitter recently to change that perception. announcing he would, upon entering office, pardon the likes of Edward Snowden and Ross Ulbricht. Mr. Snowden came to worldwide prominence after he was a subcontractor for the NSA, and he revealed massive spying on domestic and foreign citizens by the CIA and NSA. And they basically just tap into the big lines of communication, basically to get the internet across the ocean. They just have a big ship going across the ocean with this huge line of fiber optic cables and such, and it just goes to the bottom of the ocean, and they just drag it all the way across. That's literally how it's done, and those are all over the ocean, and many very advanced governments have submarines capable of just diving down to the bottom. I'm sure not in the middle of the Atlantic, like 15,000 feet, but off the coast, they could just dive to the bottom. They can get those cables, they can tap into them, and they could read all of the internet coming across it, which I'm sure is easier said than done, because there's so much information going through it. And the NSA just with local, and I've heard of the NSA going into like AT&T, like Verizon and stuff, and they have like that one room where basically the government taps into all of their communications from the ISP, from various ISPs like Cox and Verizon and stuff. And those rooms, you could Google pictures of those rooms. It's basically just this room with no door handle or just completely locked, and it's just this mysterious room, and nobody ever uses it. None of them ever use it. Just an engineer comes in once in a while and deals with it, and it's basically just all of the internet goes into the ISP, and then it goes into that room and goes to the NSA, and then it goes out to everybody else, and the government's just sweeping up that information. So, on the first day of my presidency, I pardoned people, and, good luck on that. It's really nice that he's bringing that attention out, but it's just not going to happen. If it does, I don't know, I'll eat my own words. But I'd like to see it happen, maybe. But I don't know. It's not gonna. So 277 billion market cap today, and we're all in the green. Just a few scattered reds. So it's looking good. It looks like we did hit the bottom there at about 5,800 or so with Bitcoin. Where was that bottom? Let's see. Let's do a 1 month here, and yeah, about 5,800. I think it may have dipped temporarily a little bit below that, but 5,800 was the low, and ever since we've been moving back up, and we'll have to see where it goes from here. But it's looking pretty good. 278 billion market cap after that refresh. Always got to do that refresh, but things are looking pretty good. Everything's just pumping pretty good today, and looks like we may see a revival in prices for at least a little while. But I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and as usual, I will see you guys next time.